Hello and welcome to MCU&Me, where I walk us through the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe chronologically. Following the Sacred Timeline with the benefit of hindsight, I'll point out nods and references along the way to see how all of these projects are intertwined. In this first episode of the show, we're going to cover a lot of ground, so strap in and enjoy.
There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people, to see if we could become something more. So when they needed us, we could fight the battles
that they never could.
We begin where everything begins, the Big Bang. Some 13.8 billion years BCE, that's before the Common Era, give or take hundreds of millions of years. Whether ours is the first and only iteration of a previous universe collapsed in on itself, it doesn't really matter what model of the universe you believe in. You just have to accept that at some point there was a spark that jump-started everything as we know it. This spark, believe it or not, is actually critical to our story. In this colossal explosion that jump-starts our universe, designated Universe 616, 6 elemental crystals are cast across the Virgin Universe. These stones, of course, each represent and control an essential aspect of the universe and life and just everything. They are space, power, mind, reality, time, and soul. Now, if you ask the collector, he'd say, before creation itself, there were 6 singularities. Then the universe exploded into existence, and the remnants of these systems were forged into concentrated ingots, infinity stones. Whether these infinity stones were the result of the Big Bang or a byproduct of it, in any case, they are powerful objects that can only be wielded by powerful beings. More on that later. Okay, so boom, new universe, stones, now what? Well, the only intelligence or life during this cold, dark time is that of the Celestials. They are the oldest and most powerful life forms to ever exist. Apparently, they predate the universe, so perhaps it was their doing to hit reset on everything and start over with a blank canvas of cosmic scale. But why do they do this? Well, think of them as scientists tinkering away to create life. Before they can do that, they need to create the right conditions for life. So the Celestials start to form stars that later become the suns for nearby planets that will later spawn life. They need civilizations to flourish because it's how they're able to create more Celestials. We'll get to that in a bit. For now, we know they're busy at work shaping solar systems. Not all Celestials are the same, however, as another has been formed seemingly by happenstance. The Celestial known as Ego, last names The and Living and Planet. While other Celestials are mega giants that can hold planets in the palms of their hands, Ego is sort of just a big brain that forms layers of matter around himself, building a planet for a body. This type of galactic work takes time. They cannot fast forward nature, just manipulate it. So we'll be making some rather large time jumps in this episode. As galaxies and star systems are forming over billions of years before any life takes shape, one such system is formed, a cosmic nebula in the shape of a tree, I guess. It's known as Yggdrasil by the classically educated, or Tree of the World, even more simply, the World Tree for us of lesser schooling. The World's Tree connects the 9 realms together, 9 solar systems that are massive and super far apart, yet connected together by this nebula that looks like a plant. These 9 realms are Asgard, where Thor lives, Midgard, where we live, Jotunheim, where Loki is born, Svartalfheim, where the Dark Elves live, more on them shortly, Vanaheim, a sister world to Asgard, Nidavellir, where Mjolnir is born, made by the dwarves, Niflheim, where Hel is, that's H-E single hockey stick Hel, Muspelheim, where Surtur is from, he's fun, and Alfheim, home to the Light Elves. Now, we're about 4.5 billion years, give or take, before the Common Era, and Earth, also known as Midgard or Terra across the galaxy, is beginning to take shape. The conditions are about right to foster life. But what's so special about Earth? Remember those Celestials I told you about? Well, the prime Celestial, known as Arishem, planted a little something in Earth's core. This celestial seed requires tremendous amounts of life force energy to grow. Grow into what? Well, another Celestial. That's how they make more of themselves. They're grown inside planets, and when they hatch, the planet is destroyed. Doesn't sound too good for Earth, now does it? One of the oldest beings in the universe are the Asgardians. Asgard was one of, if not the first kingdoms to be established in the Nine Realms. Its people are basically gods with long lifespans and incredible strength. They eventually devised the one and only fast transport system that doesn't require spaceships to get you across the Nine Realms, known as the Bifrost. This will allow Asgard to essentially colonize the other realms and bring them all under its kingdom. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Back to the Celestials. Knowing that the Celestials are invested in the flourishing of life forms on planets like Earth, they want to come up with a way to protect these fragile life forms from stronger predators that evolved before humans. Quick side note, Asgard isn't exactly a planet, more of a flat Earth type of situation, not to be confused with our very spherical Earth situation. In this case, these godlike beings built Asgard for themselves. It wasn't the Celestials that did it, therefore there's no celestial seed in the center of Asgard, therefore the Celestials are leaving the Asgardians alone. So there's no reason to worry about Asgard, right? Humans are notoriously fragile, so the Celestials create the deviants to protect them from predators and give humanity a chance to evolve and learn and grow. However, these deviants, who are also given the ability to evolve, end up turning against humans and hunt them for sport. That issue will be dealt with later on. Look, there aren't many timelines established for this era. I'm speculating on things here as I obsess over the order of events, but just to put things into perspective, let's say we're about 3 million years out still. To solve the deviant problem, the Celestials use what's known as the World Forge, presumably what they use to mold worlds, to make instead much more sophisticated protectors known as Eternals. They are made to look like humans and model them, but they cannot evolve and are basically fancy super robots. They are emotionally intelligent and have their own consciousnesses. You can think of them as true AI with really technologically advanced bodies. They would put vision to shame. Okay, if we've established one thing so far, it's that the universe and Earth are very old. Besides the evolution of our species, other forces are beginning to take shape on our little blue and green planet. Magical forces, dark forces, supernatural, you might call them. One such demon by the name of Chthon is lacking pen and paper and decides to carve his collection of rightfully forbidden incantations and spells inside of a temple that was built atop of a very remote mountain called Mount Wundagore. This temple was built to be the future throne of a prophesied Scarlet Witch who will one day possess reality-bending powers. Will this be a good witch who will use those reality powers for altruistic means, or a bad witch who will destroy reality because, she lost her AI android husband to a genocidal maniac who was collecting the Infinity Stones, one of which was securely planted in said robot husband's forehead? Anyway, Mount Wundagore is super difficult to get to, being protected by dark magic and all. Even the masters of the mystic arts, more on them soon, can't easily get to it and thus avoid it. About 2.5 million years ago, to quote Njobu, future prince of Wakanda and brother of King T'Chaka, millions of years ago, a meteorite made of vibranium, the strongest substance in the universe, struck the continent of Africa, affecting the plant life around it. And when the time of man came, 5 tribes settled on it and called it Wakanda. But we're getting ahead of ourselves again. Around this time, after spending billions of years alone, Ego the Living Planet decides to put himself out there. He certainly can't go around in his actual form, brain or planet, so he uses his abilities to manipulate matter and construct himself a body made of flesh and blood. More of a vessel for his consciousness to travel and interact with other species. And by interact, I mean interact, if you catch my drift. He begins sowing his seeds. You know what? Let me start over. As Ego visits other planets and life forms, he leaves behind bits of himself, like seeds that grow into plant-like objects for a future expansion plot that we will get to later. He calls these expansions of himself. Another part of his plan to fill his loneliness is to spawn an heir. For now, let's just say he puts Genghis Khan to shame. Alright, jumping way ahead to about 5,000 years before the Common Era, the Eternals have finally arrived on Earth to deal with the deviant problem. From their perspective, it's their first time being deployed anywhere. They don't have any memories of anything else. They get to Earth and start kicking some deviant butts, assuming anatomically deviants have butts. I haven't been able to confirm this. Kevin Feige won't return my calls. The Eternals are protecting humanity so it may continue to develop, returning them to the top of the food chain. Operating under the belief that crises often lead to life-giving forward leaps in technology, the Eternals are prohibited from interfering in humanity's wars and other such catastrophes. They're only allowed to get involved when deviants are the problem because, aside from being OP, they're the mistakes of the Celestials. Coming back to Njobu's quote from earlier, The time of man has now come, and 5 tribes in Africa joined together around the vibranium impact site to form the nation of Wakanda. Their first ruler is the warrior shaman named Bashenga, who receives a vision from the panther goddess Bast that directs him to seek out and consume a purple glowing flower known as the heart-shaped herb. This little plant has uniquely absorbed the properties of vibranium, so after Bashenga consumes it, he also receives those properties, which translate to heightened agility, strength, and acumen. These abilities empower Bashenga to lead and protect Wakanda, not only as king, but as the first Black Panther. Not all of the tribes agree to this way of rule, however, as the Jabari decide to go their separate ways and head for the mountains. Vibranium proves to be a wonder material, allowing Wakanda to advance its society technologically by decades and centuries ahead of the rest of the world. The leaders recognize that this rare material would make them a target and susceptible to attack, colonization, exploitation, and worse. To avoid these fates, Wakanda decides to hide its true self from the rest of the world by camouflaging its capital where the actual advancements occur and pretending to be a humble agrarian society. Is this the right move? Maybe. That's a question for a later episode. Right now, we're focused on just the order of events. I will say another society does something similar, but more on that soon. Next, we'll turn to the mystic arts. Somewhere around 4,000 years BCE, the ancient people of Earth begin to dabble in magic. A sorcerer named Agamotto becomes one of the first humans to research and perfect mystic abilities. He shares his knowledge with others, forming the Masters of the Mystic Arts. This sect builds 3 sanctums around the world in locations of extraordinary power. These locations end up becoming the cities of New York, London, and Hong Kong. Their purpose is to act as watchtowers against supernatural threats. Later in life, Agamotto comes into possession of the Time Stone that somehow ended up on Earth. The stone is too powerful to wield directly, so the Eye of Agamotto, basically a fancy necklace, is built to allow the Sorcerer Supreme control of the stone and therefore of time itself. Shifting gears slightly from the supernatural and mystic, we turn to the gods of the MCU. Yes, gods exist in this universe, small g. There are many of them, each specializing in one thing or another. These beings of extraordinary power get bored easily, so they often venture to planets to interact with civilizations for entertainment. Plus, they love to be worshipped. Many interactions of the gods with humans of our planet have led to the mythologies we grew up learning as a means to explain what our ancestors witnessed. Asgardian interactions with the Nordic regions inspired Norse mythology, while other gods like Zeus and his pantheon became Greek myth. Egyptian myth was likewise formed, but some gods prefer to remain aloof and hidden from us mortals. Due to the lunar god Khonshu's constant meddling in human affairs that nearly exposes the gods to the world at large, the ruling Egyptian deities banish Khonshu, whose name, by the way, translates to traveler, and he does not like that one bit. By 3500 BCE, a rogue faction of the alien species known as the Kree, who are hell-bent on conquering other worlds, seeks to enhance their war efforts by genetically altering various sentient beings across different planets, including Earth. This results in the creation of a unique group of genetically modified humans known as Inhumans, who gain special powers through a process called Terrigenesis, activated by Terrigen Mist. The Kree's illegal operations are discovered by those in charge, forcing them to abandon Earth, leaving behind the Diviners and a hidden city. Oh, they also left behind a corpse of one of their deceased Kree. The first Inhuman, Alvius, later known as Hive, overcomes his Kree creators due to his abilities to control others of his kind. Fearful of Alvius' power, both humans and Inhumans unite to banish him to the planet Maveth, using a Kree monolith. His followers on Earth form a secret cult known as Hydra, dedicated to finding a way to return him. Over time, tensions rise between humans and Inhumans, leading many Inhumans to relocate to a Kree outpost on the moon, which they call Atalan, where they establish a strict caste system to manage their society. We're now around 2988 BCE, and a cosmic event known as the Convergence is taking place, where all 9 realms move into alignment. This alignment of the 9 realms has odd effects on physics and space, causing portals to open between the realms. Where otherwise the Bifrost was the only means to travel quickly between realms without a spaceship, the Convergence allows anyone to make the journey as they are. This time around, the Dark Elves of Svartalfheim decide to take advantage of such an event to start a revolution of sorts, inspired by their leader who's known as Malekith. His goal is to return Yggdrasil, and presumably the rest of the universe, to a state of eternal darkness. You see, they're called Dark Elves not because they're necessarily bad or use dark magic, but because they hate lights. What emboldens Malekith to take on such a monumental task, especially when it means going up against the rule of Asgard? Well, he found an Infinity Stone, although he didn't even really know what it was. The Reality Stone, to be exact, has taken the form of a vaporous ether. All Malekith knows and cares about is the power it grants him when it enters his body, like a parasite to a host. But he doesn't get a chance to bond with it. Of course, the Dark Elves are met with opposition as the Asgardian king, Bor, leads his armies in an attack against them. Bor secures the ether before Malekith can use it to reshape reality. Malekith, in an attempt to avoid capture, sends his warships crashing into the Asgardian forces so that he may flee, a desperate tactic to be later deployed by another ambitious and psychotic bad guy attempting to reshape the universe. More on him in a later episode. Malekith and his remaining lieutenants manage to escape capture and enter a state of hibernation where they'll wait for another chance to strike at the next convergence event. Doing some math with the advantage of hindsight, that won't be until around 2013. Switching gears a little bit, we need to come to an understanding about this universe. While I'm focusing on the chronological order of events in this universe, typically designated 616, aka the Sacred Timeline, there is a caveat in the form of pocket dimensions. While I'm not getting into multiverse projects unless they cross over into this universe, I do need to include events that take place in different dimensions than ours, yet still are part of our universe. Does that make sense? Multiple dimensions within one universe. Speaking of, that brings us to around 2,000 years before the Common Era, and in another dimension known as Ta Lo, the humans living there in peace are under threat by the Dweller in Darkness, a huge beast that nourishes itself on the spirits of living things. It rampages through Ta Lo, endangering all of life there. Its aim is to escape that dimension through the only portal that links it to Earth. The human warriors join forces with a noble dragon they call the Great Protector to battle the Dweller in Darkness and its many smaller soul eaters. They drive the monsters into a mountain where they trap them behind a door made of dragon scales. They built a village nearby so that their descendants can continue to watch over the Dark Gate in order to protect not only Ta Lo, but Earth and other worlds from this evil that's trapped within. Meanwhile, back in our dimension, but over in the realm of Nidavellir, which got its name from a dying star, by the way, something mystical is happening. A race of giant dwarves lives on a station built around this star that acts as a forge for their unique and epic blacksmithing talents. They use those talents, per Odin's request, to forge Mjolnir, a hammer that Odin describes as a weapon to destroy or a tool to build. Odin gives this powerful hammer to his firstborn daughter, Hela, who wields it to assist the Allfather in his takeover of the 9 realms of Yggdrasil. You see, Odin had claimed his throne from his father Bor, with great ambitions, to say the least. Hela's ruthless command of the legions of Asgard helps Odin lead violent takeovers of the interconnected worlds. They steal resources and gold from these worlds and use enslaved labor to construct the royal palace that towers over Asgard. We jump now to 575 BCE, during the Battle of Babylon, where the Eternals managed to defeat a horde of deviants outside the walls of Babylon, which is at this point the largest city on Earth. Mesopotamia has become the Eternals' base of operations for thousands of years at this point, and their Domo starship is embedded in the ground beneath Babylon's famous Hanging Gardens. You know, hiding in plain sight. This part of the world, later known as the Middle East, is the birthplace for many advancements necessary for the unfettered growth of the human population. The Eternals, while not allowed to interfere with human conflicts, are tasked with aiding humanity's advancement, as that aids in their overall goal of providing life nourishment to the celestial seed growing within the world's core. One Eternal, the innovator known as Phastos, considers introducing the steam engine at this time to the Mesopotamians, but his fellow Eternals veto the idea, insisting that humans aren't ready for such technology. He instead introduces them to the simple plow. Introducing humanity to technology before they're ready for it can backfire, as we'll see later in the Common Era. The work the Eternals are doing leads to a rise in several advanced societies around Earth. Their heroism doesn't go unnoticed either, as stories of their battles and involvement become enmeshed with the mythology of those cultures who cannot distinguish the Eternals from gods. Sprite, the storyteller of the group, makes up tales of her fellow Eternals to inspire humanity, such as Icarus flying too close to the sun. Foreshadow. Spending so much time blending in with humans, the Eternals begin to develop richer bonds with each other as Icarus and Circe fall in love and Druig and Makkari continue to grow closer. Before we continue this speed run through the past, a quick word from our sponsor. In a world where heroes and villains clash, there's only one drink that keeps you cool under pressure. No, it's not Sprite, it's Pinco Doce. When the battle's intense and the stakes are high, grab a Pinco Doce because even Thor needs a refreshment that's lightning fast, and Tony Stark swears by its crisp, refreshing taste after a long day of saving the world. Packed with the perfect balance of citrusy power and ultimate refreshment, Pinco Doce is the superhero of sodas. Whether you're taking down Thanos or just taking a break, make it Pinco Doce. It's not just a drink, it's an experience. Refreshment as powerful as your favorite hero. Pinco Doce, the official drink of the multiverse. Drink responsibly, superpowers not included. Now, back to the show. Jumping a few more centuries, we're now in the Common Era. Woohoo! We finally made it. We return to Asgard, where things aren't going so smoothly for the rulers of the Nine Realms. Odin, post-realm conquering, decides to rebrand into a benevolent peacekeeper. This doesn't quite sit well with his still power-hungry daughter, Hela. She sees her father as weak and turns against him. By this point, she's earned the title of Goddess of Death and attempts to overthrow her father's throne by massacring the palace. Odin's solution is to banish her to Hel, the remote, desolate realm of Niflheim. He also strikes her name and image from the kingdom's art and history, pretending she never existed. Dad of the Millennium material, right? Remember, folks, history is written and rewritten by the victors. Well, it doesn't take long before Hela breaks free of her imprisonment. Asgard's greatest warriors, known as the Valkyrie, an all-women Pegasus riding force, are sent to recapture Hela and are nearly exterminated in the process. They manage to lock Hela away. However, all but one Valkyrie are killed. Hela will remain trapped so long as Odin lives. The surviving Valkyrie is ridden with guilt and leaves for self-imposed exile, brought on by the grief of losing her sisters. After the death of her daughter around 16 CE, Alexandra Reed, although she won't go by that name for many centuries, settles in Kunlun to seek answers about life and death. Kunlun is a mystical city located in a pocket dimension. Its gate can be accessed from China once every 15 years. While there, Reed distorts her master's teaching alongside 3 other students, Madame Gao, Sawande, and Bakudo, in their quest for immortality, leading to their collective banishment. Reed convinces another student named Murakami to join her, and together the 5 of them form an organization known as the Hand, where each of them represents 1 finger. Because there's 5 fingers, they make a hand. You get it. They use ancient dragon bones to prolong their lives. Throughout her extended life, Reed will amass a significant fortune and criminal empire, adopting false identities to conceal her immortality. The Hand goes on to perform all sorts of atrocious behavior in pursuit of what they call the substance, which is their resurrection elixir. Since the key ingredient is dragon bones, they search all over for any they can find. In 79 CE, they discover some underneath the city of Pompeii. In order to cover up their actions, they set off the volcanic eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Moments before the eruption takes place, Loki Odinson, the Asgardian god of mischief, and a time variance authority agent named Mobius transport themselves from the future to Pompeii. Loki uses the few minutes left before the eruption to cause some havoc and even warn people of the coming tragedy. He does this to prove his theory to Mobius that no matter what happens in the moments before a catastrophic event, it won't change the sacred timeline, as Pompeii and its residents are destroyed regardless of Loki's actions. The Hand destroys the city and is able to retrieve the bones they need without anyone knowing. On to some happier times. The eternal Circe and Icarus decide to get married around the year 400. Talk about a long engagement. Jeez. It's been nearly 1,000 years since they started dating. And here I was getting crap for taking 5 years to pop the question. But enough about me. The real question is, can these robots actually love? Of course they can. They just don't age. They're eternal. While living in the Gupta Empire that sprawls the subcontinent of India, they decide to have a very human and very traditional wedding, for this area and time, that is. I wonder if their love is also eternal. Jumping a few more centuries, the Eternals continue to do their thing, keeping humanity on track and getting involved only so much that they fade into stories. For instance, around the 5th or 6th century of the Common Era, during the Dark Ages and a time of King Arthur, the Eternals somehow end up keeping the legendary sword Excalibur. If you ask Sprite, she'd say Arthur even had a crush on the expert swordstress of the group, Thena. Somewhere between the years 500 and 900 CE, we don't exactly know when, the Ancient One is born. As you might have already derived from her name, this Celtic woman will one day rise to become the Sorcerer Supreme of the Masters of the Mystic Arts and keep that position longer than any other Sorcerer Supreme before her. What's her secret? Well, it's obviously dark magic, but more on that in a future episode. Okay, the year is 965, and Earth, specifically Tonsberg, a Viking settlement in Scandinavia, is being attacked by the frost giants of Jotunheim. They thought they could just invade our planet and deliver another ice age, except Midgard is under the protection and rule of Asgard, whose armies arrive in our defense. The frost giants have been at conflict with the Asgardians for a long time, but can you blame them? No one likes being colonized. The battle in Tonsberg ends up being a turning point in this conflict as Odin eventually drives the fight back to Jotunheim to win the battle and discover something, or someone, special. You see, Odin doesn't just take the dangerous weapon, the Casket of Ancient Winters, away from King Laufey, leader of the Frost Giants. He also takes the king's son, who Odin might say was abandoned. But maybe he was just left on the planet to, sleep like a baby does, away from all of the fighting. Anyway, Odin takes this child, Loki, home to Asgard. Now, I forgot to mention an important detail. The frost giants are, giants and also blue-skinned. However, when Odin picks up the little frost baby Loki, his skin turned white like the Asgardian kings. So perhaps a bit of magic made it so the child would grow like the Asgardians instead of his species. Also, I should mention, I skipped an important birth. That of Odin's second-born child and first son, Thor. Loki is brought back to Asgard where Odin and his wife Frigga, a witch, raise the boys up together. Odin hopes this will somehow create a bond between the two realms to ensure lasting peace. Sure, that's what holding someone's child prisoner will do. Of course, no one tells Loki about his origins, not even Thor knows. While the two grow up as brothers, Loki can't help but to feel contentious about his place, as Thor is the favored firstborn. Little do they know the true firstborn is trapped in hell. Loki's solution is to become smarter and play tricks. His mother, Frigga, teaches him powers of magic and illusion, which Loki in turn uses to torment Thor. So here we have two very different brothers, both with the same ambition to one day rule over Asgard and the Nine Realms. On one hand, we have Thor, the god of thunder, who has made a name for himself among Asgard's armies for his natural displays of raw strength. Now wielding the hammer Mjolnir, no one really stands a chance. On the other hand, we have the jealous Loki, who quickly grew into his trickster persona, secretly vying for the throne, slowly making moves, and waiting for the perfect opportunity to take advantage of and prove himself just as worthy to Odin. Now, across the galaxy in the year 1000, tensions between the Kree and the Nova Empire have gotten to the point where open fighting has begun. This leads to a multi-planetary war that drags on for 1,000 years, give or take. We'll get around to some more notable events in the future, but I just wanted to point out when things really hit the fan for these two species. In fact, we'll see the Kree involved in quite a few conflicts. We return back to Earth to round out this episode, but still have a lot of time to cover before we're caught up to the modern era. About 1,000 years ago, an ordinary man makes an extraordinary discovery that will change not only his life, but history. Wenwu comes upon 10 indestructible and powerful rings, bracelets really, that when worn give him eternal life and godlike strength and abilities. The history is kind of mudded and lost. He either discovered them in a crater or while raiding a tomb. What we do know for certain is that Wenwu uses this power to build himself a massive army and following, aptly named the 10 Rings. They'll topple kingdoms and take down anyone who stands in their way. Around this time, Odin is still sending his Asgardian army around the Nine Realms to keep the peace. This includes sending soldiers to Earth every now and then, even visiting himself. It's these visits and interfering with humanity that leads the people of Earth, especially the Nordic regions, to turn stories of witnessing the Asgardians into folktales. Upon one of his visits, Odin hides the Tesseract Cube on Earth. Inside of the cube is the Space Stone, another of the Infinity Stones. He ends up hiding it in none other than Tonsberg, Norway, the same place Odin kicked King Laufey's frozen tush. You see, the Tesseract used to be inside Odin's weapons vault. Instead, there's a fake there. The real Tesseract is inside a medieval church, with yet another fake that is buried inside a sarcophagus as a decoy, while the real cube is hidden in a wall depicting Yggdrasil, the world's tree. Odin likely leaves it here so such a powerful weapon isn't tempting to anyone, aka Loki, back in Asgard, and since the humans aren't nearly strong or capable enough to wield it, he believes it's better off on Earth. It's a good thing Wenwu or even Ego doesn't find it. Odin's mistake is underestimating the technological advancement of humanity, which will eventually bridge the power gap in the universe. Something else is left behind during the 12th century when the Asgardian army visits Earth, rather, someone else. An Asgardian who will come to be known as Elliot Randolph was recruited into the Asgardian Berserker army and forced to fight on Earth. When the battle ends, Elliot decides to desert and stay behind. While on Earth, he falls in love with the planet and the people, becoming something of a pacifist. The Berserker staff he was given when forced to fight imbues whoever wields it with superior strength, brought on by amplifying the person's rage and hatred. Fearing it might fall into the wrong hands, Elliot breaks the staff into 3 pieces and hides them. It's now the year 1521, and this is very exciting because the Eternals end up fighting and defeating what they believe to be the last remaining deviants. It's not their fault that they don't know about some deviants who had gotten embedded in the ice in the planet's Arctic regions. For all intents and purposes, those deviants are trapped. It's not like our planet will begin to warm globally for any reason in the future. This seeming end to the deviants takes place during the fall of Tenochtitlan, the heart of the Aztec Empire, to invading conquistadors from Europe. They take care of the deviants once and for all, sure, but they're forced to stand by, yet again, and watch, prohibited from interfering to stop the genocide. The Eternals finally begin to question their purpose. Maybe humanity's weapons have become too deadly. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea to help them advance. As if things aren't bad enough, Thena begins to suffer from what they call mad weary, a mental disorder the Eternals suffer due to their memories being wiped so many times over. But they don't know that's the real reason because, well, the memory wiping. Past memories which should have been erased, millennia worth, are creeping back into her consciousness, causing her to relive past trauma and forget where she really is in time. Ignoring his orders, Druig defies Icarus and decides to intervene and stop the slaughter. Druig has mind control abilities, which he uses en masse to stop all the fighting. The ethics of using mind control to stop a genocide is a different conversation we don't have time for right now. There aren't many Aztecs left alive, but Druig takes them away as he leaves his eternal family into exile. By 1546, Elliot Randolph has been living on Earth for a few centuries and ends up meeting and falling in love with a French woman. He tells her his entire life story, and her brother, a priest, ends up writing it down to create the legend of the warrior who stayed. Remember that vibranium meteorite that hit Earth around 2.5 million years ago? Well, another fragment hit elsewhere, except it wasn't on land and therefore took much longer to have any effect on surrounding life. That's because it landed in the Atlantic Ocean and affected the properties of an aquatic plant. In the year 1571, the Tolocan tribe from the Yucatan Peninsula consumed this plant and discovered that they can now breathe underwater. However, this causes their lungs to lose the ability to breathe air. And yet this came as a much-needed salvation since the European explorers have been ravaging their homeland. Moving their civilization underwater allows them to escape the diseases and brutality of these colonizers. During their transformation, one woman is pregnant at the time, so the plant has a different effect on her child. When the child is born, they discover a different sort of mutation. He has pointy ears, wings on his ankles which allow him to fly, ages much slower than everyone else, and he has the ability to breathe both air and underwater. He is named Kukulkan by his people, which means feathered serpent god, and they make him their leader for many generations to come. A few decades later, Kukulkan's mother passes away, so he returns to the surface in order to honor her wishes to be buried where she was raised. He is disgusted to find the enslavement of their people, those who didn't consume the vibranium-enhanced plant and remained living on the surface, by the invaders. Since he ages slowly, Kukulkan looks like a small boy still, but he leads his warriors in a violent revolt where they kill the invaders and free their people. Besides being able to breathe underwater, the plant enhanced his people's strength as well. A Spanish priest who bears witness to the battle calls Kukulkan El Niño Sin Amor, the child without love. Kukulkan decides to embrace the nickname Namor as a warning to his enemies. We're now in the year 1693, and a coven of witches is living in the Puritan settlement of Salem, Massachusetts. The entire coven turns against one of their own, Agatha Harkness, because her own mother is accusing her of practicing the darkest magic imaginable. Rather than protest and defend herself, Agatha admits to everything. The Coven channels beams of energy at her body, but Agatha simply absorbs the magic and ends up draining the life force out of her entire coven, leaving behind only desiccated corpses. With the life force of so many powerful witches, Agatha ends up living for many centuries to come, but her whole life is consumed by her search for more power. As a result of the killing, the Coven's remaining children come together with the sole purpose of enacting revenge on Agatha. They're known as the Salem Seven, and, as the centuries will pass, they'll become feral and hive-minded, driven only by their need to kill her. Jumping to the year 1750, Agatha is pregnant and in great pain. She's about to have a stillbirth when Lady Death appears before her in the forest. Yes, Agatha knows the cosmic entity of death, at least this form she takes as the original Green Witch. Agatha tells her, "You do this and I'll hate you forever," only to then plead with Death to let her child live. "Please, my love," she begs. Oh, right. Not only does she know Death, but they have a thing. And no, they're not just gals being pals. Lady Death tells her, "I can only offer time," but she doesn't specify how much. Moments later, Nicholas Scratch is born. Soon after, Agatha happens upon a group of witches in the woods who invite her and her newborn to some of their food. Instead of thanking them for their kindness, Agatha drains them of their power, killing them all. 6 years later, Agatha has gotten her son into the ruse. He helps his mother lure in witches to be drained. During their travels, he sings and develops a new ballad about walking the windy road. That morphs into a song about a witch's road that serves in getting the attention of witches as they adventure from town to town. Then one night, while they're sleeping in the woods, Lady Death comes for Nicholas, who has died in his sleep. The next morning, Agatha wakes up devastated. She soon realizes that their song has not only spread far and wide, but evolved into a belief of an actual witch's road. So she leans into this false belief, using it as a new ruse to lure covens into angrily attacking her when she claims that failing to open the door to the road is their fault. Upon doing so, she's able to drain their powers. She does this for centuries, getting stronger and stronger. Okay, last time jump for this episode. We skip another century to 1853, where the warrior who stayed, Elliot Randolph, visits a castle in Gloucestershire, England, because he hears a rumor of a group of lords that have traveled across the stars coming together here on Earth. While there, a drunk guest admits that there is no space travel happening at the castle, only ritualistic killings. Having gotten his answers, Randolph goes on to enjoy the party. The group in question are members of the Hydra cult, and the ritualistic killings are them sending people to Mavith via the monolith to please and feed their leader, Hive. And that's where I'll leave things for now. Wow, what a first episode. It certainly was all over the place in both time and location. We covered the birth of the universe all the way to the 1800s. I promise you, there won't be another episode that covers that much of the Sacred Timeline. More like a few decades at most, to even as little as only 1 year for some eventful dates. Thanks for listening, and tune into episode 2, where we pick up in the 1920s with the birth of a certain hero who will one day become the most beloved captain.